Welcome once again. I'm Charlie Greenberg, your host and moderator for Digital Business Demos. Thanks for joining us today as we continue to provide live business demos that focus on different digital transformation and platform strategies, and in particular demonstrate different components and products within Software AG's digital business platform. Today we're going to be discussing and seeing MashZone NextGen and how this tool can provide actionable insight into your data. In just a moment, we'll be hearing from Manish Devgan, Vice President of Product Management, and Chris Furlong, Director of Product Management for MashZone NextGen, who will also be presenting today's live demo. And if you're not familiar with Software AG, we're a customer-centric leader in many innovative and digital technology categories. Additionally, we have more than 4,300 employees, $1 billion in annual revenue, and we can cite over 70% of the Global 1,000 as customers. And those customers, they include over 2 million developers at leading organizations who have adopted Software AG products to innovate solutions, build applications, cross-industry, cross-private and public sectors, and who also rely on Software AG to help them complete their journeys as digital enterprises through the end-to-end capabilities of the digital business platform. So please keep in mind that following today's presentation, we will provide a Q&A session. So as usual, use the WebEx Q&A box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen at any point in time for any questions and comments. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Manish Devgan.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Welcome, everyone. My name is Manish Devgan, and I'll be doing first half of the presentation today. I'd like to start this presentation with introducing the Software AG Digital Business Platform, or DBP in short. The Digital Business Platform is an adaptable technology layer that fits into an existing IT landscape. It is created to be open and independent to work seamlessly with the industry's best solution providers. The DBP simplifies and connects it all, your software, apps, devices, and quickly infuses business value across your organization. And as you can see, the DBP has categories of capabilities shown as building blocks here on the slide, from business and IT transformation to business process management, integration and API, to data management and analytics, and device management, specifically for connecting to IoT devices. Now, these set of capabilities are available on cloud, on-premise, in a hybrid deployment model, and also on the edge as applicable. We truly believe that our customers' digital future starts with the Software AG Digital Business Platform. Here is a detailed view of our DBP, and you can see a set of capabilities, and we will focus on a certain set of capabilities in this webinar today. The stack or the set of capabilities we are going to focus on is data and analytics, highlighted in green here. And the data and analytics platform is an integrated set of capabilities that lets you harness the power of data and advanced analytics. And this helps our customers, leapfrog competitors, enhance their business processes, or improve product performance and satisfy use cases that help them become a true data-driven business. Technically, it is very well suited to implement the speed layer in the Lambda architecture parlance. And we'll be talking about the data and visualization tier today. So these set of capabilities are offered by Universal Messaging, MashZone NextGen, Zementis Predictive Analytics, Apama, and Terracotta. Now, if we go back to our DBP slide, as I said, there are a set of capabilities that span functionality, and the data and analytics set of capabilities basically helps you ingest, store, search, and explore data of all types, shapes and sizes, and extract hidden meaning behind patterns and trends. These capabilities help deliver data-driven business intelligence effectively across the enterprise, and also ensures making of right decisions quickly and responding to threats instantly. So in today's webinar, we are going to focus on the data prep and visualization capability. And these capabilities are offered by our MashZone NextGen product. And I would like to hand over to my colleague Chris to cover this in more detail. Here you go, Chris.
Thank you very much, Manish. I'm just going to share my screen. So Charlie, if you could let me know when you can see the slide deck again.
We're seeing it now.
Excellent, thank you. So good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. From the accent, you might guess I am based in the United Kingdom. So good afternoon from here. So what is MashZone NextGen? As Manish just mentioned, it's our data preparation and visualization tool, but it's purpose-built for the digital business platform. So what our vision for MashZone really is to be the face of the digital business platform, the ones that management may interact with, for example, rather than a coding or an administrative interface. So we have use cases and go-to-markets alongside some of the products in the Web Methods family. For those familiar with ARIS on the process management piece, ARIS Aware is actually an OEM of MashZone NextGen. So the skills for MashZone NextGen are transferable to ARIS Aware. And then, as we mentioned previously, we have this data and analytics offering where Parma and Terracotta, Parma being the streaming analytics engine and Terracotta being an in-memory store, we can also visualize that data. So to give you some use cases, we have a rather large shipping customer who is using MashZone NextGen, Parma and Terracotta. So they've got shipping information flowing into the platform in real time, storing it in memory, and they're using MashZone NextGen to look at exceptions and SLA breaches. That's all for them about improving the accountability of their business, because this is looked at by shift leaders and management to find out what is actually going on across their delivery network. And we're talking about 5-minute interval here, so near real-time exception management for a logistics company. We also have another use case here, which is a real-time customer engagement. It's quite an interesting one. It's actually a casino. So what they have is Web Methods is picking up data from lots of different parts of the organization and different systems, then pushing that through a Parma, which is then doing some complex event processing, looking for anomalies. Terracotta is also used as an in-memory data store for some of that data going through. And MashZone NextGen is being used to visualize that. So they have a vision of a high roller coming onto the casino floor, and instantly people knowing where they are. Simple things like, was it their birthday within the last 7 days or the next 7 days? So that they can, welcome them, say happy birthday, all of that sort of thing. So they're really getting into a 360 kind of customer engagement view of some quite complicated back office systems and some real-time systems going there. They can see where this high roller is on the floor and how much money they're spending in real time, so that they can then take appropriate steps if they're doing well or they're not doing well. And again, powered by the digital business platform. So just to give you a couple of ideas of the use cases where MashZone is being the face of all of that integration and data in motion type activities going on in the background. So some key benefits of MashZone. We can build highly interactive, business-focused, and importantly, if necessary, real-time dashboards. And that can help you uncover insights from a rich set of data sources, not just software AG data sources. There are also external data sources we can access, and I'll elaborate on that in a little bit. Transform that data into something meaningful. That's the data preparation part of it. And with real time, of course, you can continuously monitor these KPIs and metrics. dashboards we build are also responsive, so we no longer have to worry about what sort of device. Am I using a tablet? Am I using a desktop? We can respond to those different devices appropriately. So to drill into some of this a little bit more and give you some kind of highlights, and then we will move onto some demos. So in terms of connectivity, I think this is where for webMethods users and users of other parts of the digital business platform, this is where MashZone really excels. You may be aware that some of the data in some of these tools that we have are quite difficult to access because of the nature of it. So streaming events with digital event services coming out of webMethods, for example, or Palmer events. We also have specialist connectivity on the process modeling and process mining side with ARIS and the PPM products. webMethods integration is there, and I think quite importantly for customers who have any of the Terracotta products, we have native first-class connectivity to both the Terracotta cache, the EH cache pieces, and the brand new Terracotta DB, the Terracotta store piece. On top of that, and we fully appreciate that not all of your data lives in software AG. I mean, kind of, if not, why not? But we appreciate that's not the case. So MashZone also supports connectivity via JDBC, flat files, XML, CSV, JSON, via web services or stored locally. So a full spectrum of data connectivity is available. Now, once you've got all that connectivity, what becomes really interesting is that data may not actually, in its kind of raw form, be fit for visualization purposes. So MashZone has what we call data feeds, and it's a data prep environment. So we can allow you to blend that data and prepare that data. It may be joining multiple data sources. It may be a little bit of data massaging. It may be pre-aggregation. The example there is handling latitude and longitude that was stored in one field, for example. The key thing here is MashZone doesn't really care whether this is streaming data or data at rest or both. We can actually blend, say, a stream of data coming from a Palmer and blend that against a set of static data. So maybe in an IoT use case, it's readings coming, or alerts particularly coming from a device, and we can go and connect into a back office system and get the service history for that device. For people more comfortable with a SQL-like dialect, we have what we call Raquel, which is a real-time analytic query language, very similar to SQL, which we can drop this kind of Raquel block in and use the SQL dialog. If you're connecting to JDBC, we can use SQL anyway, straight against those sources, but we can kind of level out all of those sources by providing that level of capability for power users. You don't have to do that. You can build pretty much every transformation. If you see down here, we have a palette of transformation types, and I'll show you a little bit more of that when we get to the demo. You can build this all out graphically if you want. Some people are more comfortable in a SQL-like environment, and we can embrace that as well. One of the new features we've got, a sneak peek of what we've got coming in our next October release, is the ability to materialize one of these feeds. So if you have a particularly low latency, slow data source, for example, we can now take that data, and on a schedule, we can actually materialize the results of that MashZone data feed in the brand new Terracotta DB, Terracotta database store, which can give you some performance advantages potentially, particularly against larger, slower data sources. Mentioned responsive dashboards. MashZone NextGen is entirely HTML5. There are no components to install, so it's all browser-based. So even the administration, the data preparation piece, and absolutely the dashboarding piece are HTML5. Mentioned responsive. Again, don't care if it's data at rest or data in motion. So just to give you an idea, this is a screenshot from a desktop, screenshot from an iPad, and a screenshot from a much, much smaller device. And you can see MashZone will flow the visualization widgets appropriately to fit the device. Real-time dashboards, we've mentioned that a lot. So if you have web methods and you're sending out DES events, we can visualize that. If you're an Apama user, we can also visualize the events coming from Apama. We also, with the Apama product, have the ability from MashZone to do some real actionable analytics, because we can send events back to the Apama correlator. And I'll show you a little bit of this later. So if anyone's familiar with Apama, I'm sure you've seen the weather demo. This is the equivalent of that built in MashZone. So I can tell the Apama correlator that I want to monitor a new location, or potentially change a threshold in an alerting rule or something like that. So we go a little bit further than visualizing that real-time data into getting into that closed-loop communication. So out of the box, we offer a fairly rich set of core visualizations. So usual suspects, line charts, bar charts, scatter charts, grids, various gauges, traffic lights, various ways of interacting with the dashboard, so combo boxes, input boxes, and you'll see some of these in the demo. But where MashZone, I think, goes further than that is the ability to build your own custom visualizations or custom widgets. So I've got 3 examples on the screen here. One you'll actually see in the demo is a floor plan. And in this case, I'm using an animated GIF, but I'm showing the location, the red dots are the location of the staff in that particular store, and the kind of green clouds are the location and density of the customers. So we can in real time see what's going on, and that's built on a custom widget to show the layout of that store. The one in the middle is part of the offering we have with the PPM product. It's a very specific visualization for showing function and process flows. The one on the right is a chord diagram. So it's quite easy and relatively quick for the appropriate kind of JavaScript skilled developer to take either an existing SVG or something from the D3 library widget, wrap it appropriately for MashZone, and then drop it in. So what you can build in these dashboards really is, what do you want and how far can you imagine you want to visualize this data, particularly with the extensibility that we now have in MashZone NextGen. For the Command Central users, or predominantly the Web Methods customer base, where Command Central is heavily used, MashZone fits into Command Central to help with your DevOps. So you can install fixes, lifecycle management, monitor it with some performance KPIs, some configuration. There is a migration tool for between versions as all part of our Command Central integration to enable the DevOps approach with MashZone NextGen. And from an enterprise perspective, going back to our smart logistics customer we were talking about before, these guys are supporting over 4,000 concurrent users with a 5-minute refresh rate. And there's a huge amount, as you can imagine, from a global package shipment type company. It's a huge amount of data flowing into that platform, and having 4,000 users not looking at the same data, they're looking at their particular areas of interest with a 5-minute refresh. That requires a highly scalable architecture behind the scenes to do that. Sneak peek on 10.3, one of the big requests we have from the larger global customers is multilingual. People don't want to build one dashboard for each language. So from MashZone 10.3 onwards, you can build one dashboard and apply the translations into that dashboard. It's fair to say data security is important, absolutely is important. So not only is there single sign-on support for integrating with LDAP or whatever your SSO is, but we can also take things like the username, and we can use that to apply, obviously, user-level security, so which dashboards can this user see, but we can also take that username and use it as part of the data feed to apply data-level security. So if a particular group of people can only see data from a particular region, we can build that in to the data flow and the data that is presented to them, all keyed off the username, for example. So there may be some customers and people on the phone here who are aware of the older MashZone legacy product. So before I go into demos, I wanted to talk a little bit about where does MashZone NextGen fit with the Flash-based MashZone legacy product, and how do I migrate between them? What are my next steps on that? So the first thing to say is MashZone legacy has 2 years life of support left. The last release was 9.12, which was October 2016. End of maintenance in October next year, end of support the year after that. Now, there is a migration guide available on Empower. There are the tech community forums, and of course you can reach out to our pre and post sales team. But really, it's time for MashZone legacy customers, not only because MashZone legacy is end of life, but Flash is also end of life in 2020. And we're all aware of the security and technical management challenges running Flash brings. So if you're on MashZone legacy 9.10, or 9.9, 9.10, 9.12, it's time to start planning when and which version of MashZone legacy you migrate to. So right now, I would suggest 10.1. If you're planning your migration next year, MashZone 10.3 will be out. But just to give you an idea of what the key differences are, MashZone legacy was Flash-based. We've already talked about MashZone NextGen being HTML5. Flash-based deployments were not responsive. NextGen is. We talked about extensibility in custom widgets, so you can actually do much, much more visualization. The old MashZone legacy product had some very hard-coded data limits in. MashZone NextGen, in theory, doesn't have hard data limits. It's hardware constrained, but there's always a little bit more to that. It depends on the complexity of the data, the refresh rate, but there's nothing hard-coded into the product. MashZone legacy is slightly harder to scale. NextGen is a much, much more modern, more scalable, as we see with our smart logistics customer. There's a supportability question around MashZone legacy. We've just said there's 2 years left of support. Current product is MashZone NextGen. There are additional sources, so Palmer and Des, so the real-time sources are available in NextGen. For heavy users of Terracotta, the new Terracotta database, the new Terracotta DB, is supported with MashZone NextGen. And geomapping, which is the one thing some of our legacy customers had identified as a gap, that's available in MashZone 10.3 onwards. So we no longer consider there being a significant or critical feature gap. So now is definitely the right time to start planning your migration. There are some differences. They're predominantly in the rendering technology. I think it's a great opportunity to embrace HTML5. There is documentation on the migration, and there are tools to help. And of course, you can speak to your account manager, your pre-sales or post-sales as to how Software AG can help you do this migration. So I want to show you 2 demos, and I want to talk about them a little bit before I actually show you them. So for those people on the call who watched the universal messaging demo, you would have session that was 5 or 6 weeks ago. You would have seen a demo based on connected retail. It was actually a MashZone NextGen front end. But before I show you that, I wanted to explore a little bit more about what was going on in that demo. So it's a demo, so it's conceptual, but conceptually in this we have staff and location data coming in real time. We have point of sales information, ERP data coming in. So we're connecting through the speed layer to those real-time sources. We're integrating them. We're then caching and storing some of that data, interacting with the streaming analytics engine to look at exceptions and apply the relevant alerts and rules on it, and visualizing it in MashZone NextGen. So to map that to product names that people may be more familiar with in the DBP, maybe more or less, The connectivity to the devices in this demo is being handled by Cumulocity IoT platform. The batch layer integration to the back office systems is being handled by webMethods. Terracotta in-memory data is being used for the in-memory store. Streaming analytics is then handled by Palmer, and MashZone NextGen being the visualization layer on the top. And all of the interconnectivity there is being handled, if not natively, being handled by universal messaging. That's kind of the glue between all of the products. So if you're familiar with our more detailed DBP architectures, this is most of the data and analytics platform and some of the integration components being used there. So I'll show you briefly that demo. And then what I actually want to do is show you briefly how we build a demo, how we build a dashboard in MashZone NextGen. And I'm actually going to use a real-time source. Actually, in this case, it's Palmer. But as we mentioned, it doesn't really matter what the sources are. The principles of how you do it are data agnostic. So first things first, I'll show you the connected retail demo. So I'm going to log into MashZone. I then get what we call the landing page, which is just an entry portal into MashZone, which shows you what dashboards are available to your user. And I'm going to select the connected retail demo. And you can see here we have a tabbed kind of dashboarding interface here. So if I go into the overview, you should see some of the widgets in use. Unfortunately, my Google API key has expired on the map, which is why it's not behaving. But we should be seeing the location of stores here. But you can see here I pulled out some key metrics. It's my share price, my earnings per share, my online sales, the sort of things you would show potentially on an executive type dashboard, a quick overview of the sale, of the environment, and what's going on. Moving down a level into a kind of a more in-store view, what you can see here is that custom widget we mentioned before, where we're tracking real-time location of our customers on a floor plan. You can see some customer alerts coming in here. There's some overcrowding near checkout 3. You can see some kind of average distance traveled, the average time in store, all in real time for what's going on in that particular store. We have a sales data view here. I'm just using this to give you a flavor of the sort of ways we can visualize data. So we can break down historic sales by volume, by hour, by product, quantity in 1-minute batches, however you want to present this data. We also have some slightly more interesting stuff going on in here. This is simulating potentially using e-ink labels on the shelf. And actually do here is do some real-time price adjustments, because we can real-time price on the shelves. So we can use this to send something back to a Palmer, which can then trigger the updates of these e-ink devices. So that actionable analytics piece. I'll come back to the shopping basket analysis in a minute, but this is that other view we saw on the custom widget slide, where we've now got the location of the staff as the little red dots. And you can see my staff in my store tend to shy away from where all the customers are. They're all in the bottom left-hand corner, and all my customers are up near the checkouts. So I may need to shout at a few people there. And again, we were talking about identifying underlying trends in data. So we've got some basket analysis going on here. So I can look at the good old beer and pretzels type analysis we can do here. So I can take a look at cold drinks and fruit and see what the correlation is between different types of cold drink and fruits, for example. So that to enable that sort of depth of analysis in here. So I'm now going to move off that demo, and I'm going to jump over to a slightly different MashZone server. And I'm going to show you briefly the sort of dashboard I will build a part of for you so you can see what it is, and then I will start building out some of this dashboard. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're familiar with the Palmer and the weather demo, this is a MashZone variant of that. So you can see in here I've got 4 locations were being monitored, and London has been selected by default. So I can flip that over to New York, for example, see the history of temperature, humidity, and visibility at New York, the current values on it. We mentioned actionable analytics, so I will add my local software AG office, which is in Cambridge. I can add that, and now Palmer will start to monitor that location for me. If, say, I'm no longer interested in monitoring Tokyo, again, I can get a Palmer to remove that, and it will disappear out in a minute or so. A Palmer will stop monitoring that location. So we've got a real-time dashboard with some kind of key interactivity here. What I wanted to spend a few minutes was showing you a little bit about how we put this together, what goes on behind the scenes. So I'm going to create a brand new dashboard in MashZone NextGen. Now, when you create a dashboard in MashZone NextGen, we default to our responsive grid. If you still want, potentially you've got a use case for showing metrics on a fixed resolution screen in the corner of the office type thing, we can do a kind of pixel perfect, precise layout. In this case, I'm going to go with my flexible grid. Now, if this isn't enough granularity, which for a lot of dashboards it isn't, I have this layout group widget. I can drop it in and make my grid more granular. I'm not going to do that for the sake of simplicity here, but what I am going to do is pull our grid widget in and just stretch it across here and connect this to a Palmer. So there's two ways we can manipulate data. We talked about the data prep environment, the data feed environment. I'm going to use a slightly lighter version of that, just for the sake of a demo. But the first thing I must do with MashZone is connect it to my data source. So you can see here ARIS, PPM, events, big memory, Terracotta DB, JDBC, all the data connectivity we talked about before. So in this case, I'm going to take events, and I'm going to take my weather feed. Now, any stage while I'm building this data prep, these data feeds, I can have a look at the output of the data just to see what I'm going to get. So this one is not actually the one I want. I want Weather 2. Weather 2 is just showing me the latest values for all of my locations. So I'm going to take that, but as I mentioned earlier, if I wanted to do some data manipulation, you can see here we've got change data type, delete columns, duplicate them, aggregation, arithmetics, filtering, concatenating text, extracting text. For example, my latitude and longitude problem where I had it in one field, I use converting and extraction to get those values out so I can put it on my map. I can also take a look at the columns we've got coming back, so I could change the names in here, which will then pass through into the dashboard. I can see the data types, for example. Some data sources we have, for example, the Terracotta ones, by the nature of the Terracotta products, we also have routines in here for schema guessing because there are no SQL or in-memory key value stores. So we need to do schema guessing to determine the structure on those. For this demo, it's quite simple. I'm just going to use the event source weather 2, and then I'm going to say, how do I want this laid out? So I'm going to take a column with the last event type so I can see how fresh the data is, then pull out the temperature, visibility, and humidity. And you can see here I've got the ability to override the format it's shown in, the name of it, again, the location, temperature, how I'm aggregating it, or potentially thresholds. So I could say anything greater than 50. No, that's most of the data in here. So anything greater than 70 degrees is something I want to highlight visually to the user, so we can use visual prompting, really. We can change the background color, the foreground color, or a good old traffic light, which we can, little red, yellow, green within the grid. So I'm going to quickly drop that in, and you should see that updating when I drop it into view mode. So we have a design time kind of view of the dashboard and then a view mode where we will get and refresh the data. Before I do that, I also want to drop in a line chart. And again, I'm going to quickly connect that up to a Palmer, but I'm going to take a view of the data which has all of the history in. in here, and I'm going to show on the axis the time. I want the temperature, the visibility. No, I want to put visibility on the second axis. Put the visibility on the second axis because of the scale of it. Put humidity, sort of a similar scale on there. And I'm happy with average on here, and again, I can manipulate the formats on the data. So I also, just for a bit of clarity, will rotate the axis a little bit. So you can see there's lots of formatting options in here as to what type it is, what data points do I want to put on, do I want a legend, and where do I want it? So in this case, let's put it on the bottom so the legend location is controllable. Now, before I drop this into view mode, there's actually one change I need to make to this dashboard, which is to say the location is a key. And you'll see why that's important, because we have a view on this streaming data, which is just showing me the latest value. I need to set my key there. But before I do this, I want to filter this line chart based on whatever I select in the grid. So I'm going to take the location, and so when the location on the line chart is equal to the location on the grid, that's the filter I want to apply. But if I don't have a filter, I don't want you to show that chart. It's a little bit meaningless muddling and averaging the temperature, for example, across potentially multiple locations here. So I'm going to drop that now into view mode, and you should see our dashboard will update. And if I come in here and I select Cambridge, for example, I can see the history of the readings we've got coming through on the weather for Cambridge. It's simulated data. It's not actually 53 degrees in Cambridge. It's way hotter than that in the UK today. That's what I wanted to show you as a demo. So we've taken a look at a very rich demo in the connected retail. There's a lot of moving parts, very rich dashboard built to visualize that data with potentially lots of different views and use cases for visualization of that data shown in that one dashboard. Taking a very brief look at the weather demo, and we've taken a look at some of the concepts and the drag and drop and kind of self-service dashboard building we have for MashZone NextGen. I think, Charlie, with that, that's me finished my content.
And a very interesting demonstration it was, Chris. We appreciate it. Before we go to Q&A, I'd just like to touch on the next round of Software AG-sponsored user group sessions. If you've attended any of these, you would know that the purpose of the events is to share best practices with fellow Software AG customers, share user experiences, see what's trending, and better understand what's coming up on the product roadmaps. So please go to the Software AG site where you can register at no cost for either the New York City event on September 17th, which focuses on WebMethods products, but also Eris, Alphabet, Adabase, and Natural. Or we'd love to see you in Chicago on September 19th for another deep dive user group discussion on WebMethods, Eris, and Alphabet. And if you don't want to memorize the registration link or try to cut and paste it through your screen right now, drop me a note through the chat box. Please feel free to request the registration link, and we'll provide that to you straight away. And speaking of the chat box, or more specifically the WebEx Q&A box, let's move to the first question. And we'll assume that either Manish or Chris will figure out a way of answering this. So for starters, how is MashZone licensed?
So predominantly the licensing for MashZone is per core. So most of our customers have it per core. There are some different options based on different use cases. So, for example, with PPM, there is a specific version of MashZone NextGen for PPM that's licensed along the same methods as PPM, which is by process instances. It is a change from how the old MashZone legacy product was licensed, which was licensed by viewers and creators. In some respects, it's a lot cleaner. It's how many cores do you need to support the workload. So most of our customers are out there are on a core-based licensing model.
One attendee asks, I have MashZone with a WebMethods product. Is there anything additional I need to build my own dashboards?
So in some respects, the answer is it depends. But most of the time when a WebMethods customer has MashZone NextGen, unless they've explicitly asked for full use MashZone NextGen, they will have a product code that on their kind of mix of products of JBP, BP. So most of the MashZone use cases with WebMethods, the out-of-the-box ones, are read-only MashZone. So we provide a dashboard with some WebMethods products, but there's no ability to manage or change that dashboard. So for some customers, they will already have got JBP, which is the full MashZone NextGen. For others with JBP BP, the read-only one, then they will need to upgrade to the full-use MashZone NextGen to unlock, I suppose, all the extra capabilities of MashZone NextGen.
Alrighty, so let me make sure I can get this correct, but the question is, can we plot real-time data, a floor map or diagram, for example, as in manufacturing operations, where you plot real-time data on a manufacturing floor map to capture incidents on the floor?
Absolutely. In fact, that's a little bit of what that connected retail demo was showing. We had, although being a retail demo, it was based on a layout of a shop floor. There's no reason why it couldn't be a visualization of a factory showing temperature values and alerts overlaid onto that kind of vector layout. So absolutely, that use case is very doable with MashZone NextGen.
Okay, great. I think we may be coming to our final question. To attendees, please note that we have copiously provided both Manish and Chris's contact information, which means you're free to use it. Whether you want to call Reston, Virginia or England is up to you, or more to the point, maybe use the email address. And use it, please, if a question occurs to you after we've concluded today's question. So what does a migration to MashZone NextGen for MashZone Legacy require?
Okay, so the first thing is there's a conversation that would need to happen with your account manager around the kind of the software licensing aspect of that. Once that's resolved and you have MashZone NextGen, there are, I suppose, two main assets that exist in both MashZone Legacy and MashZone NextGen. One is data feeds, and there is a migration tool that will take an existing data feed and a document that explains what to look out for. There's a few things that are different, but fundamentally we can migrate the data preparation piece, which in most dashboards is probably 75 to 80% of the work is acquiring the data and manipulating it and getting it ready for presentation. So we can migrate that asset. On the dashboards, there is such a difference in rendering between Flash and MashZone NextGen being an HTML5 that unfortunately we haven't found a way of successfully automating that migration. So that is a manual rebuild process for the dashboard assets. But as you've seen, that's actually the quick part, and it also gives you an opportunity to refresh the look and feel, get the best out of MashZone NextGen in the most visible areas of it. Now, that's something that a customer can absolutely undertake themselves. That is also something Software AG can help the MashZone legacy customers do if they don't want to get as involved in that process.
Great response. Thank you very much. And I want to, at this point, thank both Chris and Manish again for participating in today's presentation on MashZone NextGen. We're going to take the rest of the month off and enjoy our leisurely summer days of August. Please note that we're coming back with dynamic apps, MFT agents, B2B cloud. That is an exciting release for Software AG, and we want to tell you about it in October, as well as RPA, or robotic process automation, coming up in November. And there'll be other topics as well that will fill in between those sessions. In the meantime, thanks for attending, everybody. Thanks, Manish. Thanks, Chris. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.